Sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir. Continue, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.
Good afternoon to all my dear student friends. Today, we have to study about this fourth unit. In this fourth unit, we have four blocks: Gandhi and state and nation. Second block, individual and state. Third one, political ideologies. And fourth block, peace by specific means. So, Gandhi's political thought, main introduction to Gandhian political thought. Gandhi is one of the greatest activists and theoreticians of the 20th century. His writings emerged mainly during the varied process of social, economic, and political actions. One cannot turn to the writings of Gandhi for a definite statement in his political philosophy. Political actionist, one of the practical philosopher also. He was not a theorist. His writings abound with inconsistency, one result of his persistent habit of thinking in public. Whatever philosophical formations he made were inspired by and directed towards solving of immediate problems. So his explanations, he offered a number of methods, objectives, his policy, it was one of the part of his programs for actions. So they should not be interfered generally in terms of the theory of a practical master or planning. So the aim of Hindu Swaraj was to answer the anarchists with an alternative to violence. There are from Gandhi's earliest experiments with Satyagraha, equally important, it is the book's concern with the concept frame. It takes one of the Gandhi's first extensive statement on Swaraj. And the ideas which he sets forth here provide the basic for much future thinking of the meaning of freedom, Hindu Swaraj. So, autonomy of modern Indian political thought. Though the Western assessment of the ancient Indian political thought is very discouraging, it is both rich and varied. This tradition is very old, beginning with the Vedic period, followed by the Upanishads, the Dharma, Shastra, Buddhist literature, Manusmriti, ఇంకా the ఈ పర్వ శాంతి పర్వ the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata, Ardhashastra schools. This was followed by the uh, advent of Islamic thought from 18th century onwards also. The best flowering of the Islamic political theory came during the reign of Mughal Emperor, Akbar, main Akbar the Great. So the major challenges to modern political theorizing has been its continued search of identity in the fact of the domination of Western thought and also their culture, which inevitably follows the 200 years of the presence of the British imperialism, Samrajyavadam. In sharp contrast to many other areas of the world, they were the imperialism destroyed all traces of indigenous cultures and also our traditions, even languages. The Indian society reflects continuous debate and dialogue with the West, which makes modern Indian political theory distinctive and autonomous. The trend begins at the very inception with the writings and actions of Raja Ram Mohan Rai, who is the first most important political thinker of the modern times after India came the contact with the Western ideas and institutions. The establishment of the ascetic society in 1844 under the able guidance of the William Jones and ancient Sanskrit literature begins throughout light of the rich heritage of ancient Indian civilization. These facts are unknown to the educated Indians and act as a great stimulus in creating a new confidence in our minds. This is the one of the actions of Ram Mohan. In fact, Ram Mohan is the first great president commenters like who rightly believed in the progress and advance of civilization as a cooperative enterprise. This enables the modern Indian thinkers with renouncing their own culture, tradition, inheritance. The path initiated by Ram Mohan is followed and elaborated by Chandrasen, Dayananda Saraswati, Swami Vivekananda, Gandhi, and Rabindranath Tagore, and etc. Gandhi represents a culmination of this discourse. He moderns tradition by highlighting the problem of modern industrialized, westernized civilization in Hindu Swaraj. It was considered to be the most important tract in political theory. His major success as a modernizer of tradition is possible due to the groundwork. So earlier thinkers, but the major differences between the earlier thinkers and Gandhi lay in this ability to perform a transformative criticism of many of the ideas and the earlier thinkers also dealt with them. Intellectual influences on Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi grows to political maturity in the West, which means that his essential experience is the British experience. He exhibits considerable influence of Western thinkers like Ruskin and Tolstoy and throughout his life. He regards Socrates as an example to emulate and even translate Plato to the apology in Gujarati. In basic principles of politics, he indicates a marked preference for anarchism, which essentially belongs to a radical Western tradition. In organizational matters, the Western imprint is clearly discernible in him. In the matters of the personal conviction, like vegetarianism, some Western groups, their writings clearly influence Mahatma Gandhi. Salt, a plea for vegetarianism. So, a revelation to Gandhi for it dependent in rational terms teachings transmitted to his half attentive mind in childhood by means of the uh, precept. Gandhi acknowledges Ruskin Tolstoy as exerting profound intellectual influences on him, though Ruskin's unto this last transforms his life. An English friend, H.S.L. Pollock, gives the book to him for him to read while understanding 24-hour journey from Johannesburg to Durban in 1904. So he summarizes his understanding of the book into three principles. That's why Ruskin and Tolstoy, their influences a lot on Mahatma Gandhi. They are, they are known as a intellectual influences. Gandhi learns from Ruskin that an unequal social order not linked from realities of labor could not allow for the possibilities of non-violence. Like Ruskin, he also believes in restricting wealth and placing tools in the hands of those who could use them. Ruskin's principles inspires Gandhi to work out the basis of his concept of bread labor, of making the community organization responsible for the welfare of the laborer and stress on cooperation rather than competition. These ideas are put into practice during the mill strike in Ahmedabad. Gandhi advocates a concept of minimum living wage. So, it is the proportional equality permitting differences among the individuals beyond the minimum on the basis of differing needs of the poor peoples. Ruskin's ideas on political economy are the bedrock of the principles of Gandhi's ashram organization. So Ruskin influenced Gandhi's conception of soul force as a substitute for physical force. He was the chief source of Gandhi's economic ideas. Above all, he changed Gandhi as a person. So Tolstoy faith in love and teachings of the Sermon on the Mount, the Bible, and the New Testament, civil disobedience of the Gandhi to delineate his concept of Satyagraha inspired by Thoreau. Gandhi advocates emancipation of the human being. Gandhi is as removed from the Marxist ideal of a socialist, stateless, classless utopia. It has been from other Western socialist schools like the Fabian socialists and the Guild socialists. So he opposes the Marxist deterministic account of society and history. Their belief in class polarization, denial of God, and their emphasis on violent revolutionary change. Gandhi not only emphasizes gradual non-violent change, but also desires to restrict the ambit of revolution and state action. Gandhi upholds private property and that society should recognize the art of creating wealth through. He proposes the institutions of trusteeship based on a harmonious relationship between the capitalist and the workers. However, like Marxist and the socialists, he desires an egalitarian, just and non-exploitative society. So Gandhi also differs considerably from the liberals, though he cherishes individual rights and also initiatives. He is not concerned with maximizing freedom like Green. The only Western parallel to Gandhi may be Rousseau, but like the later he too idealizes a glorious past but realizes that since there is no going back, salvation lies in small, independent, self governing, and self sufficient communities. Gandhi describes himself as a philosophical anarchist, ఓ తత్వశాస్త్రంతో కూడుకున్నటువంటి ఆ, అరాచకవాదాన్ని ఈయన వర్ణిస్తాడు మహాత్మా గాంధీ. ఈ హిమ్సేజ్డ్ ద పర్ఫెక్ట్ సొసైటీ యాజ్ అనార్కియల్ వేర్ ఈచ్ ఇండివిజువల్ ఈజ్ ఏ లా టు హిమ్సెల్ఫ్. వాడంతటా వాడే చట్టాన్ని గీసుకోవాలి, చట్టాన్ని ఫాలో అవ్వాలి. లివింగ్ పీస్ఫుల్లీ and with goodwill towards all, controlling all his fashion and living by his own labor. It is a romantic ideal which attracted men like Rousseau and Ruskin. He is opposite to the sort of social organizations idealized by Plato in the Republic. He prefers a society where the state would be reduced to its minimalist role. Gandhi's faith in the inherent goodness of the human nature enables him to win over his enemies through persuasion. Hence, the Gandhian movements remain entirely open. Critic, uh, critic of the West, in spite of being influenced by the West, Gandhi rejects Western civilization, both as model and as an inspiration. His vision has very little to do with the West. The Hindu Swaraj is the primer of his political philosophy to which he remains consistently committed. He denounces Western materialism and modern technology like the railways, the telegraphs, and the telephone and the heavy industries. He categorically rejects all the major components of the modern industrial civilization. He focuses on the relative all apparent from the Indian example in the Hindu Swaraj. Gandhi desires a free India that would not emulate the Western path. This means giving up through he modifies some of his ideas subsequently, like accepting small scale industries and also those industries where labor is not useful or desirable. He adheres to the overall thrust of his initial arguments as articulated in the Hindu Swaraj. The rise and modernization of Japan in the early part of the 20th century had stirred emotional sentiments in India. Gandhi is the Japanese example and instructs his Indian readers not to follow the Japanese model. But the solution to the Indian problem has to come from within India rather than importing foreign ideas and institutions. Gandhi's Free India is one where the economy and quality would be different from that of the other modern industrialized nations. So this is the because countries like India, with abundant labor and large scale unemployment and underemployment should restrict the use of machinery. It desires industrialization that would satisfy wants like food, shelter, healthcare, and basic education, though conscious of the impersonal and monotonous life that industrialization entails. He is ready to accept it if it helps to satisfy the basic needs of the basic human requirements. Gandhi's attitude to the West differs considerably from other non-Western revolutionaries. Mao Zedong, Chiamin, ఇంకా Che Guevara and Franz Fanon, they are not only rejected the Western political and economic domination, but also their traditional ways of life, their own people, and especially the religious elements that provided the formulation for the ancient cultures of the Asia and Africa, replacing them by Western political forms and by Western technologies. So he denounces the Europeans virtually as war criminals. He regards European scoundrels, for it has been founded on slavery, that it comes directly from the soil and from the subsoil of the underdeveloped world. So a seeker of indigenous roots. Gandhi's conception of Swaraj is different to one that is articulated by the Western Marxists, socialists, even the liberals to the assimilates their ideas. He is an ardent individualist like the liberals, but his ideal is maximizing individual freedom by promoting common good. Philosophically, like the anarchists, his ideal remains the society where the state plays a minimum role but shuns the stress on revolutionary violence. Gandhiji defies classifications as the prophet of bourgeois nationalism in India. First, the means that he employed are such that they will successfully end. This autonomous development of Gandhi's ideas represent the fullest expression of the indigenous roots of modern Indian political speculation. From Ram Mohan Rai to Vivekananda, the quest has been for assimilation of the Western ideas and culture with that of the East in the 20th century. Tagore and M. N. Rai, along with Gandhi, all three noted rooted in the Western experience, attempted to transcend it by initiating a discourse that is closer to the Indian reality. Tagore announces the Western culture of nationalism by emphasizing the universality. Rai's participatory democracy is an attempt to go beyond both liberal representative democracy and authoritarian centralized communism. Gandhi uses Western concepts and ideas to critically discuss the shortcomings of India. The reconstruction of India is Gandhi provides a comprehensive critique of Western modernity and modernization by contesting the assumptions and conclusions of self confident nationalism, particularly its views about the inferiority of the East and the superiority of the modernity of the West. All the same time, he rejects readings of Hinduism as inherently fatalistic and passive and seeks to recover robust consumption of autonomy and action in his tradition. To analyze Gandhi's role in Indian transformation, realistically one has to take his role as a social critic seriously. Admiration of the British institutions. Admiration. The use of the technique of satyagraha is also an offshoot of Gandhi's understanding of both British history and character. He was convinced that the redress of grievances could be expected only when the people demonstrated that they were willing to suffer for getting a relief. In this context, he gave the example of the British suffragists asking the Indians in South Africa to emulate them by developing the capacity to endure suffering. The best of the suffering was the yardstick by which the British conceded, and Gandhi gave the example of the century long struggle for women in Britain to secure the right to vote. Many years later, he recollected that an Englishman never respects you till you stand up to him. Then he begins to like you. He is afraid of nothing physical, but he is mortality, afraid of his own conscience. If you even you appeal to do it, show him to be in the wrong. So he does not like to be rebuked for wrongdoings at all. So this is the reinforced by the fact that through the techniques of the satyagraha, it could be used everywhere and alternative to war in resolving conflict. So Gandhi's innate respect of the British sense of justice continued even after his return to India. And during the First World War, he recruited soldiers for the British Army unconditionally, whereas both Tilaku and Jinnah refused to do so without any advancement of the nationalist cause. This confidence which he had in the ultimate British sense of justice was shattered. So, his faith in the British sense of fair play was shaken, but not his faith about the feasibility of the essential mechanism of the British parliamentary institutions. So, Mahatma Gandhi's struggles were confined against the British and the latter allowed him to do so, and that he could never really grasp the nature of modern totalitarianism. Hegel makes an interesting point when he asserted that the world history individuals reflect in them the real spirit of the age, greatness and relevance of great persons accordingly have to be judged in the time frame of their lives and circumstances. Gandhi is no exception to the rule. He continues to hold the interest of present historians for his amazing achievement during his own lifetime in convincing the majority of the British population that imperialism and colonialism were morally wrong. Detractors normally overlook this unparalleled achievement when they blame him for many of our ills both during his lifetime and thereafter. Gandhiji's non-deterministic and skeptical outlook based on his individualized scientific method of seeking the truth allowed him to arrive at a larger consciousness on the basis of individual judgment. Even in matters of practical utility, Gandhi's dictums remain relevant. Is to build an all Indian organization, the Indian National Congress, which he sustained for the next 3 decades since 1920, or to awaken us to the fact that our major failure in present times in organizational. Gandhi demonstrated that the Indians were capable of matching the British capacity of providing a unfair administrative structure. He depicted a democratic process of electioneering in which no single individual became absolutely powerful or indispensable. Many of Gandhi's ideas have found resonance in the West and elsewhere, particularly among the peace activists, environmental groups, and feminists. His techniques of nonviolent civil disobedience has many adherents like Martin Luther King, Bertrand Russell, Petra Kelly, and like Martin Luther King, Bertrand Russell, and etc. Moreover, the conduct of a theoretical discourse on the subject has been within the framework that he finishes. A good example is railways. So, a theory of justice, Gandhi makes the Indian developed one of the deep pride in the heritage, customs, and traditions, observing whatever the worth, respecting and to escape those that retard progress and moral upliftment. Gandhiji is one of the great activist theoreticians of the 20th century. His writings emerged mainly during the varied process of social, economic, and political actions. He modernizes the tradition by highlighting the problem of modern industrialization, westernized civilization in the Hindu Swaraj, considered to the most important tract in political theory. His major earlier thinkers laid down but the major differences between the earlier thinkers and Gandhi. In spite of being influenced by the West, Gandhi rejects Western civilization, both as model and as an inspiration. His vision has very little to do with the West. So it is this severe indictment of the modern society that is significant, has very few parallels. Gandhiji's views on state and citizenship, which is called as Ramarajya. They generally agreed that one of the major consequences of that colonial rule in India is the emergence and consolidation of an overdeveloped state and a relatively underdeveloped society. This distorted development has important implications for class formation and domination. Being an activist, Gandhi was also careful when making predictions and outlining his conception of an ideal state. In 1942, while replying to a query raised by Louis about the structure and the shape of the Indian society after independence, Gandhi pointed out, I admit that the future society of India is largely beyond my grasp. So, the state, notions of state and Swaraj, the state for Gandhi represents violence in its concentrated form, but is necessary since human beings are social by nature and as such morally incapable of acting in a socially responsible manner. He desires a state that would imply as little violence and coercion as possible and wanted individual actions to be regulated by voluntary efforts as far as possible. By Swaraj, I mean the government of India, by the consent of the people, as ascertained by the largest number of adult population, male and female, native born and themselves, who have contributed by manual labor to the service. Almost all, they serve a lot to the society, who have taken the trouble of having registered their names as voters. Real Swaraj will come not by the acquisition of the authority. So Gandhi's conception is similar to that of a green for both pursue actualization of individuals' entire potential with a societal framework like Green, Gandhi does not glorify the state. To both the aim was to make life morally meaningful for all people. Both viewed the community as held together not by compulsion but by the sense of a common interest of good. So Gandhi clarifies on the need to bridge the gap between the white and blue collar workers, making manual labor mandatory for every single person. Elaborating on the theory of consent, he proclaims that real Swaraj will come not by acquisition of authority by a few, but by the acquisition of the capacity by all to resist authority when it is abused. Economic basis of political independence. For Gandhi, political independence without economic well-being is meaningless. He is conscious of the danger of continued oppression. Constructive programs. Gandhiji prescription for social progress and transformation in contained in what he describes as the constructive program. It is convenienced as an alternative positive program for social organization or reorganization to the one. The orthodox anarchists offer in its implementation, Gandhiji met with partial success. It gives content to the concept of satyagraha. It is framed. So the attainment of Purna Swaraj and consists of the some of the items communal harmony, removal of untouchability, prohibition, khadi, cottage industries, village sanitation, new or basic education, NAI, Talim, and adult education and upliftment of women and education in health and hygiene, propagation of national language, Hindustani. Of these, the most important is Khadi. Citizenship. According to Gandhi, all states have the intrinsic potential for oppression and violence, none more so than the modern, highly bureaucratic state. His ideal is a state that is benefit of the centralized power. His conception of his citizenship was based on three cardinal tenets: satyagraha, truth and insincerity; ahimsa, non-violence in throughout the deed; and dharma, moral law. So he described the state as soulless machine. He discussed state as it represented coercive power. For Gandhi, the individual citizen is endowed with dharma and is the bearer of moral authority. It is the right way. In Gandhi's ethics, self-suffering occupies an important place, which is different from cowardice, and it is to be exercised with caution. The basic differences between self-suffering, suffering is free from any such possibilities. This leads Gandhi to distinguish between non-violent mass action and passive resistance. So it is not the violence of the weak as the consistently exposes the need for non-violence, seeing it as the quality of the brave. Gandhiji is equally concerned about ensuring equality among all the segments of the society. Gandhi's entire purpose is to integrate the depressed classes, the nationalist mainstream economically, socially, culturally, with no stigma attached to any Indian because of one's caste, creed, economic status, or religion in this interrogative and equalitarian impulse. Gandhiji is an uncompromising in his criticism of the higher orthodox. Gandhi also spoke of world citizenship, the essential unity of God and man for the matters of all lives, holding that all mankind in essence are alike. For Gandhi, the fight for Swaraj means not mere political awakening, but an all round awakening social, educational, moral, economic, and political. He recommended the need to transform the Congress organization into a Lok Sabha or Lok Sevak Sangh. The state for Gandhi represents violence in its concentrated from, but it is necessary since human beings are social by nature. He desires a state that would imply little violence and coercion and wanted individual actions to be regulated by the mere possible. The ideal society could be decentralized on giving ample scope for the self-development. Gandhiji views on democracy, that means Grama Swaraj. In the modern Indian political discourse, the sharp contrast between the unbanished West and also the poverty-stricken villages of India had been a constant reminder that both Western imperialism and its exploitative nature has kept multitudes of Indian people living in the Indian villages in total servitude and these institutions. The Indian institution is comparatively to the miserable conditions of the peasantry. So, famine was a regular feature during the British colonial rule. And in this situation, the almost necessity of rural reconstruction became an important component of the individuals or national discourses. In the wake of the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, at the time of the petition of Bengal, Rabindranath Tagore, they wrote an important essay entitled Swadeshi Samrajya, Swadeshi Samaj 1904, in which there was an appeal for self-help in reconstructing the villages and solve the acute water problems, water shortage, from which it suffers penalty at this time. City village is another concept. Within the larger framework of Gandhi's concern, for majority elevations we put the ideas of the Grama Sabha and Grama Swaraj at the every center of his social, political, and economic philosophy. Since the overwhelming majority of Indians lives in villages, Gandhi's primary concern is to be concentrate on this important segment. India would drastically change for the better. The cities, remarks Gandhi, do not represent India, they are aligned to it. He considers the critics as artificially, facilitatingly considers as a cities. The British have exploited India through big houses of Europe, America, and Japan. There is some brokers and commission agents for them. Little to down dwellers know how to semi-starved masses of the Indians. Gandhi provides an alternative of total rural reconstruction and rebuilding in the process of which the entire Indian institutions or situations would change. He identifies the survival of the Indian nation with that of the meaningful survival of the villages, removing the traditional ways and means. Understanding the importance of the dynamics of power, Gandhiji begins his argument pleading for the empowerment of the small village communities. Grama Swaraji, Gandhiji is virulent critic of all models of Western industrialization as though they produce material goods but are aligned to our moral values. The village panchayat system and the village republic could create both a participatory model of democracy and would also allow an escape route to avoid the perils of Western industrialization. Grama Swaraj will be the essential framework of this alternative model to the promotion of the self-sufficiency in providing the material conditions. So, critique of industrialization. In Hindu Swaraj, Gandhi severely criticizes of the modern technology and the ill effects of modern industrialization, so much that he does not compromise with any of its forms. English process of modern industrialization and experiences in South Africa, Charles Dickens, Karl Marx, Thomas Hobsbawm, Hill Green, and the Pavilion socialists there. While Gandhi was still in England, factory legislation and encouragement of the franchise ameliorated many of the evils of industrialization. Critique of machinery also. Gandhi is keen to limit and to not eradicate machinery. His views on machinery and modern industry are derived from the influence that John Ruskin. So many authors, philosophers influenced the Gandhian thoughts. Gandhiji's Swaraj is far removed from the Marxist ideal of the socialist, stateless, and classless societies or classless and utopia. Like the Marxist and the socialists, he desires an egalitarian society but opposes their deterministic view of history and human nature. Their spousal of violent revolutionary changes like Marx, he accepts social conflict but does not think that violence is adequate. Gandhiji, like Marx, accepts that contemporary situations in full of conflict but differs from Marx in focusing on the conflict between the city and the villages. Marx's philosophy is essentially urban oriented. Gandhi, unlike Marx, rejects the notion of class struggle and class polarization and antagonism. He admits his attraction to the Marxist ideal but expresses doubts about the means to achieve it. So Gandhiji accepts if we differentiate Gandhi, Marx, there is an agreement on basis issues through their methods of reaching the ideal differ. Both accept the imperfection of the modern society since it is based on conflict and inequality. The only Western parallel to Gandhi is Rousseau for like two ideals. Gandhiji is a severe critic of contemporary society and is conscious of its divisions, structural and many inadequacies. He emphasizes the human factor in any kind of the revolutionary transformation as he desires the elimination of misery and conflict. He provides a framework for resolving conflicts, for building a social, political, and economic order based on consciousness. Both his commitment to nonviolence and his own initiatives in resolving conflicts between the different segments. He sought to transform by relying on moral persuasion and pressure on the propertized and the advantaged. The idea of the moral coercion lay at the heart of non-violent satyagraha. Rabindranath Tagore, like Gandhi, is conscious of the acute differences and the conflicts in the Indian society, but believes that it is the society and not politics that has to be the primary focus. Gandhiji's concern for majority elevation makes him place the idea of the Gram Swaraj at the very center of his social, political, and philosophy also. Gandhi's conception of nationalism. The modern Indian political discourse, which begins with Ram Mohan Rai as distinctively a social convention in Indian National Congress in 1885. The philosophy of early Indian nationalism focused more on the social rather than the political because of the deep social cleavages and the Ram Mohan Rai talks of continued Indian subordination and freedom from the British after 150 years. At this time, during the last quarter of the 19th century, there was a crystallization. The philosophy of cultural nationalization manifested mainly in Dayananda Saraswati and Swami Vivekananda. Dayananda talks of glorious of Indian past, declaring the vast Vedas to be the epic, the source of knowledge for the whole of humankind. Within this revivalist philosophy, there is also consciousness of the degeneration. So, India as a nation. Gandhiji rejects the popular perceptions that India has become a nation under the British rule and disputes the claim of those who argue that India is a nation after the British introduced Western ideas and the changes brought about by the modern means of communication, such as the railways and the telegraphs. This view he dismisses is the British interpretation of Indian history. English have taught that we were not one nation before, that it will require centuries came to India. Gandhi's claim that India is a notion, a nation is based on two assumptions. The first that ancient Indian civilization has a capacity to accommodate diversity and plurality. And the second one is the basis of the evaluation of all India consciousness. The ancient civilization of India was predominantly Hindu in character, but it was open to non Hindu values and ideas also. Gandhi highlights the accommodative capacity of India to fuse new ideas and values with its ancient civilization over several centuries. As per the second assertion, Gandhiji finds out that pilgrim centers like Haridwar in the north, Rameswaram in the south, Jagannatha in the east were established not merely for religious benefit, but to create and sustain a sense of common identity among Indians scattered over an immense territory. Gandhi opts for Hindi with the option of writing it in Devanagari or Persian scripts as the emphasis that every cultured Indian will know in addition to his own provincial language. If a Hindu, Sanskrit, if a Mohammedan, Arabic, if a Farsi, Persian, Sanskrit, several Northerns and Westerns should learn Tamil also. Need to bridge the gap between the elite and the masses. Gandhi nationalism meant self-rule, in which the whole community and not just the elite would be free and active, in which soul force and not brute force is the basis of public order, in which national interest is the supreme ethical criterion of state action. He rejects the proposition that government by national elite is beneficial simply because it is a government by the national elite as evident from his urgent criticism of the Indian princes. Swaraj is not replacing the English sahibs with Indian brown sahibs as that is the to English rule without the Englishman. Swaraj is not merely getting rid of the British, but also the fascination of modern civilization, which teaches the Indian elite to oppress the Indian people. The Hindu Swaraj proposes 19 points in that last chapter that it involves moral transformation of the Indian elite. The addresses to be the professional classes like doctors, lawyers, scientists, and also administrators, politicians, business executives,
to become instruments of the service to the nation first. Gandhi's ideal with the village as the basis of Swaraj underlines the message of self-reliance and self-sufficiency. The ideal village should produce its own food and cloth. It should have reserve for its cattle, playgrounds for adults and children, its own theater, school and water, the bottom level. Thus, every village will be a republic or panchayat having full powers, sustained and capable of managing its affairs even to the extent of depending self against the whole world. So Gandhi outlined the nature of legislative organization for the Indian nation in his speech at the second roundtable conferences as follows: each village would elect its own representatives to form and electorate for the further elections to the central or the federal legislatures. The Marxist, by causing Gandhi of being bourgeois, overlooked in his role as a social critic at his protest against existing inequalities. Next, Gandhi's views on colonialism and imperialism. Colonialism and imperialism have been important influences in the shaping and articulation of political thinking of most of the modern Indian political thinkers, including Gandhi. The exceptionally long years of the colonial rule in India had been able to mold the thinking process of the Indian leaders in positive and negative ways. As a result, while they were all able to get newer insights and perspectiveness in conceptualizing and evaluating the values and systems of life, Gandhi viewed colonialism and imperialism as the predating tendencies in the morally corruptly, economically insatisfied countries of the world that seek to fulfill such desires of theirs through the mechanism of colonialism and imperialism. Hence, in the course of the Industrial Revolution, when the availability of the raw materials, hence in the course of the market to consume the surplus production in the factories became a testing problem. The, the colonialism in alternating and replacing the value system of the active people with that of the colonial ones was arguably novel in the course of their interactions with the native people. Impact on socio-economic life. The colonial agenda, fragmenting and distorting the fundamental institution of government and social interactions. Gandhi, indeed, the colonizers would have found it difficult to rule over the vast tract of land with a massive population. Gandhi attributed the rise of European imperialism as a natural expression of the inherent impulse of aggressiveness and exploitation underlying the heart of the modern civilization. To Gandhi, the very structure of modern civilization revolved around the idea of exploitation of the one's fellow human beings by others. The dynamics of market economy had been to that in commercial transactions, no moral or ethical consideration should have been allowed to have kept in such a considerations would compromise with the commercial viability. Moreover, under the schemes of modern civilization, all economic activities must be conducted in a highly national or rational manner in which emotions, sentiments, fashions, human values, and non-commercial considerations should be kept aside. Only then an economic venture would turn out to be the viable activity. However, what was found objectionable in such a conceptualization of economic activity was the loss of human values and considerations in conducting the enterprise. 5 minutes after I came, 5 minutes I will join. Please take relief 5 minutes. Excuse me. Hello, Vinay garu. Can you respond?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, madam. Gandhi views on liberalism and constitutionalism. We must understanding the liberalism and constitutionalism. He analyzed Gandhi views on liberalism and constitution, a theoretical framework of a rootedness and openness. He evaluated. He appears to be quite useful. As a thinker, Gandhi's thought process was influenced by a number of factors ranging from his early religious upbringing Before venturing to elucidate and examine Gandhi views on liberalism and constitutionalism, it would be pertinent to discuss in brief the meaning and essence of the ideology of liberalism and constitutionalism. Conceptually, liberalism as a political philosophy, it refers to the stream of thought that developed in Europe in the aftermath of the breakdown of the federal and feudal order, drawing on the writings of numerous thinkers over many centuries. Gandhi, it is one of the core concept of liberalism and this constitutionalism. Liberalism as an ideology is marked by a number of core concepts that reflect the basic values and ideals represented by it. Uniqueness of Gandhian thought process was that he did not imbibe the liberal value system without putting them to serve scrutiny in accordance with his own convictions and value system. In this process, he sometimes transcended the limits set by the liberal philosophy on certain aspects of life and modified the idea to great extent to make that the Gandhi went for only those ideas of liberalism that he found worth and modified the others to the extent needed to make that consistent. Individual at the core. The basic premise, premise on which the entire structure of liberal ideology, nation of freedom, notion of freedom. In liberal philosophy, the next in order of priority after individual comes the idea of freedom. Given the changing nature and the liberal ideology, freedom has been perceived by different liberals differently. The negative liberals conceptualized freedom. However, positive liberals theorized the concept of freedom in a more restricted manner by arguing for reasonable restrictions. Equality having radically altered the liberal vision of freedom. Gandhi did not accept the idea of equality as defined in the liberal. Liberals' equality lies in the availability of equal opportunities and conditions of life for all under equal circumstances. Rights and duties, rationality. Gandhi had argument with regard the ideology of liberals on the and also of rational as well as given the rise of liberalism in the wake of rational and critical thinking embodied in enlightenment. So the concept of right and duty also underwent subtle transactions at the hands of Gandhi in the course of their articulation. Undoubtedly, the idea of right has been a cardinal principle of liberal philosophy, as it was the notion based upon which he whole body of thought arguing for limits and the power of state in the Middle Ages was called for by the early liberal philosophers. And the issue of total toleration also, there appears to be discord between the standard liberal view and the views of Gandhiji. He believes class interests in society. One of the concept of justice, like liberalism, Gandhi was also a firm believer in the value of justice as an ideal for civilized life. But he was apprehensive that the liberal overemphasis on the ideal had converted an operational part of the concept in the egalistic and competitive, dogmatic, and narrowly redistributive notion of jurisprudence. Gandhi was apprehensive of the liberal notion of citizenship as it is entirely a distinct space for the people of a country with accompanying rights and duties in public sphere of their existence. However, Gandhi did not agree with the narrow and lopsided understanding of this citizenship and the idea citizenship in the liberal scholarship. Constitutionalism. Besides the core of value system of liberalism, the views of Gandhi on various dimensions of the constitutionalism, Ranjanga Tattvam, it is also deserve proper attention. Undoubtedly, Gandhi was a believer in the liberal democratic constitutional system of government. In his long through indirect experiences of the working of the British democratic system, its key components such as a parliament was convinced of the numerous policies dogging the system. For instance, Gandhi was fiercely opposed to the convergence of the constitutional government, a kind of ritual in which the periodic elections would produce a body which might have been unrepresentative of the views of the people. Gandhian conception of the idea of constitutionalism appeared to go beyond the instrumental value of the concept to provide it an ethical and moral value in order to become the vehicle of an orderly and public spirited government in the true sense of the term. Gandhi never accepted the narrow understanding of the concept of the constitutionalization or constitutionalism. It is a form of government governed by the provisions of a constitution. To him, such kind of ideas did not differentiate between the totalitarian and democratic forms of government, as a constitution could exist in both systems. In fact, in present times, no country in the world could have been found to be functioning without having some sort of legal document. An exploration in Gandhi's views on liberalism and constitutionalism appears to be a study in examining and retrofitting the moral foundation behind the legalistic orientations in the key concept of the ideology, given the upbringing of Gandhians in the liberal political order as prevailed in Britain. It was natural for Gandhi to have a first hand experience of the theory as well as practice. However, Gandhi's religious and moralistic influences as evident in most of his formulations. Therefore, the main thrust of Gandhiji's views on liberalism and constitutionalism have been nothing more than a critique of the theory of lacking a moral vision behind its key concepts. Gandhi provided some sort of improvisations in the theory of liberalism, keeping in view the moralistic imperatives of the ideology. Fascism. Before beginning the exercise of articulating Gandhiji's views on fascism, with Gandhi sometimes also referred to a Hitlerism, given its high-handed implementation by Hitler in Germany. It would be pertinent to understand the context in which Gandhi was prompted to comment on certain aspects of the theory and practice of the fascism. He explained earlier it was never a concern of Gandhi to undertake an intellectual examination of the basic elements of fascism. Anti-rationalism constitute a cardinal principles of fascism. Conceptually, anti-rationalism may be understood as the antithesis of the entire intellectual framework evolved in the wake of Enlightenment. The anti-rationalist fascism does not apparently come into total conflict with the views of the Gandhi because himself was a great critic of the idea of absolute, rational and extreme intellectualism. Leadership. Another crucial element of fascism appears to be its overemphasis on the role of leadership in leading the masses towards the society on the lines of the fascist ideology. Moreover, the nature of leadership in fascist framework is overwhelmingly, repeatedly. For instance, while formulating the slogan "Victory to the strong and the weak must go to the wall," Hitler, in a way, was understanding the basic features of the fascist leadership and needs to be strong on all counts, including physical, mental, social, economic, and behavioral. Similarly, Mussolini's assertion that war is to men what maternity is to women. It is the reflective of the firm conviction of the fascist ideology. This is one of the main slogans which ascertained by Mussolini. War is to men what maternity is to women. So that is the fascism. How became as a leader through these principles, through these ideologies. 18 years boys also try to go to the military to fight. So it is one of the ideas in our fascism. Place for socialism. Dynamics of political inspired the proponents of fascism to adopt the ideology of socialism as an instrument of regulating the economic life of the people in society. Corporatism. In the economic sphere of life, fascism is marked by its emphasis on what is described as a corporatism to evolve a distinct economic system to regulate the economic life of the people in the fascist society. Conceptually, the fascist discourse corporatism stands for a typical economic system distinct from both free market economic system as well as the socialist one. So, capital and the state, in turn, the state ensures that the social interests in society are surrendered in favor of the national interest, which becomes paramount in the fascist framework of life. Fascism, racialism, so the operationalization of the fascist ideology in various countries produced a number of modifications of the regional formulations of the fascist philosophy as propounded by Italian leader Mussolini. Religion, a basic incompatibility between the perceptions of fascism and Gandhi appears to be obvious on the issue of religion. Fascism, owing very varying understanding and operationalism in different countries. It may be argued that Gandhi's encounter with the philosophy of the fascism was only incidental. Consequently, it was not possible for him to study and provide a reasoned and detailed analysis of the whole philosophy of fascism as described and practiced by the leaders such as Mussolini. Gandhi views on socialism and communism. While articulating Gandhi's views on socialism and communism, it is the important point out that Gandhiji criticized them at the levels of both as a political philosophy as well as an economic strategy to reorder of the economic contours in our society. Nehru, as his political heir, he quite often entered into force debate with Nehru on the merits of socialism as an appropriate ideology to pattern the future course of the activities of the country. An interrelated argument of the philosophy of socialism and communism on the issue of social transformation relates to the violent method of doing. In other words, Marxist discuss the transformation of the capitalist order into socialist one, and eventually a classless and stateless society would be marked by the violent methods of protest that have the roots would take recourse to be outside in the capitalist from the hegemonic positions. Gandhi was not even convinced with peaceful methods of socio-economic reconstruction in the socialist countries. For instance, Gandhi was quite opposite to the strategy of the socio-economic development adopted in the Soviet Union under the leadership of the Stalin. The socialist concern for redistribution of power and resources in society. It was also shared by Gandhi. He supported the argument of the socialist that socio-economic and political interactions between individuals in society it should be marked by the sense of equality and mutual respect for each other. Dictatorship of the proletariat. In the political scheme, under socialism, the idea of dictatorship of the proletariat appeared to be a formidable concept. But the Gandhi, the whole nation of dictatorship of proletariat seemed to be a contrast of the terms. While on the one hand, the focus of socialism had overwhelmingly been on the issue of social economic democracy with its major thrust on the eradication of the class and other sorts of the distinctions in society. Some significant aspects of social life that came to the radar of Gandhi's critical examination appear to the politics and religion. Gandhiji, politics was not a means of appropriating power and wielding authority over the other unwilling masses of people. To him, politics was an instrument of mass mobilization, service, concern, participation, and also moral regeneration of the morbid majority of people. Moreover, it would give the people to option to branch out of their stipulated economic and materialistic life as well as found the socialist countries. Religion is another discord between Gandhi and socialists existed in the issue of the place of religion in our society. While Gandhi took religion as the basic force to ingrain the sense of religion as the opium of the masses on the ground, that it intoxicated them to be blind vested interest of the society. Though Gandhi was appreciate of the insightful diagnosis of the socio-economic ills plaguing people in the capitalist society. The above argument, Gandhi on socialism and communism, may seem to portray Gandhi as the bitterest critic of the philosophy that became the reference point of socio-economic reconstruction of a number of countries in the world. However, it must be pointed out that Gandhi was not criticizing socialism and communism from any partition of the respect. So Gandhi views on socialism and communism were premised on the basis of framework that Gandhi evolved. Consequently, various theoreticians and practitioners of socialism and communism in India who were able to appreciate the Gandhism or Gandhian standpoint in critique the theory and practice of the socialism. Gandhi views on socialism and communism provide a moralist critique of philosophy noted in excessive concern of materialism and physical aspects of life. Gandhi on structural violence. Violence. Gandhi on structural violence. Gandhi comprehensive approach to non-violence has to close bearing on the contemporary discourse on peace and conflict. Many researchers find his ideas and also it's important to understand the concept of structural violence. The Gandhian lenses how violence is built into social structures and not into the persons. Gandhi intuitively understand the violence perpetrated by oppressive social structures and political institutions. Gandhi justifiable found the colonialism as one of the structural violence. Colonialism, according to Gandhi, it was thus an oppressive structure and was the caste system with which people acquired their consequences and performed their assigned duties and roles. Gandhi economics that is destructive of the moral well-being of any individual or nation immoral. A political structure, a religion, morality cannot be about the dignity, inner freedom, and justice of citizens. Thus, Gandhi highly disapproved of the capitalism, not the capitalist, racialism, not the white man, and modern civilization, and not the Western people living in it. Aware of the systematic imperatives of the operation, Gandhi stated empathetically that the replacement of colonial white regime by brown rulers would not bring any success to the suffering masses. He was apprehensive. Unrestricted individualism is the law of the beast of the jungle. In his foundational observe Hindu Swaraj, he severely condemned the modern civilization which corrodes the dignity and the soul of human beings. According to Gandhi, the unbridled quest of human consumption, wants, and addiction to technological solutions. So, preventing structural violence. Gandhi wanted to demolish such norms and institutions that justify discrimination, exploitation, and dehumanization. No wonder that his notion of non-violent activism far exceeds the narrow understanding of the violence, comparing direct injuries and bloodshed. In fact, Gandhiji's ahimsa focused as much as the system generated structural violence as an actor-oriented direct violence. Gandhi's vision on structural violence has found greater relevance in recent times. While the episodes of direct violence between the states have diminished, there people killing their fellow beings, violence by the state against its own citizens, the violence against the weaker sections has also increased, whether it is against the women or against their ethnic or caste or communities. In India, the growth of Naxalism is often attributed to the long run exploitation, oppression, and dehumanization of the tribals in a systematic manner. Clearly, then Gandhi highlighted the norm of shared responsibility and accorded the community of ensuring the fulfillment of each one's basic human needs. He chided those who craved for the surplus at the cost of depriving others of meeting their basic human needs. Gandhi's epic treatise Hindu Swaraj is, in fact, critique of structures and cultures that persist in structural violence. Gandhi had an innate sympathy for the poor and deprived. He believed that capitalism is an economic order and had roots of all exploitations. Gandhiji therefore talked about self-sufficient village and indigenous mode of development. Gandhiji visualized the philosophy of Sarvodaya to usher in economic equity, reaching down to the last and the least without ruthless compulsion and violence. His answer to structural violence was thus ahimsa and sarvodaya. While ahimsa would heal, sarvodaya would spell the sense of unity. A oneness among all without any distinction, high and low, rich and poor, strong and weak, even the good and the bad. Untouchability as violence. Gandhi found untouchability as the blatant case of structural violence and a worst crime against humanity. The question of eliminating untouchability to him was more critical than even the quest of political independence. So he wrote in Young India as early as in 1921 that Swaraj is a meaningless term if we desire to keep a fifth of India under perpetual subjection. Inhuman ourselves, we may not plead before the throne for the deliverance from the inhumanity of others. Gandhi declared untouchability as a inhuman boycott of human beings, and the thought that its removal was a prerequisite for the attainment of home rule. Gandhi not only reclaimed the dignity of untouchables by remaining them as Harijanas, God's children, but also integrated them in his personal life and work. He himself started cleaning the public toilets along with the Harijans to set an example. So Gandhi was highly grieved not only among Hindu untouchables but also among Hindus, Muslims, Christians, and all other different religions. Modern education. Gandhi often referred to the hard-heartedness of the educated and lamented that the modern education does not teach compassion or empathy for the poor and the disempowered. He reflected on the insensate of Western inspired education, which is wholly inadequate to understand the misery of those who are subjected to a systematic or structural violence. For instance, the model building and other economic analysis which has no feed the real world of poor people and reduces poor people into a series of numbers and abstractions. In all these, the meaning of poverty itself never gets interrogated. So, the concept of structural violence expands the scope of violence from inflicting direct physical damage to a range of situations which disallows humans to attain their full potentials in terms of actual somatic and mental realization, bringing out this indirect and subtle silence inflicted by the oppressive structures. Gandhi was upfront in declaring that any division in society would lead to inequality. This conceptual expansion has endowed peace and conflict studies greater insights into the generic causes of violent conflicts. Many recent initiatives like human development and human security have highlighted the core issues of structural violence. Thus, human security is defined as freedom from fear and freedom from want, which includes safety from chronic threats such as hunger, disease, and repressions, and protection from sudden and harmful disruptions in the patterns of daily life. The responsibility of eliminating structural violence eventually rests on the concerted efforts to promote political and economic institutions which consider the fulfillment of basic human needs as their primary goal. Many imperatives which, according to Gandhi, violated human dignity are new being attained within ambit of human security and human development, including increasing poverty reduction programs, support for women's education, health and family welfare, sustained efforts to use forests, water and soils which support rural economies and measures to ensure effective citizenship. Gandhi also spells out the ways to mitigate structural violence while his vision of ahimsa heals the human governance as conceived in Swaraj elevates and eventually eliminates its effects. He calls for deep reforms in the way we define and organize development and governance. Gandhi was skeptic about the state's intention and capacity to deal with core and eliminating the cores of oppressive structures. Gandhi was also empathetic that it is only by reducing or redressing the malepic effects of structural violence, which is impact the majority of people, that India could grow as healthy and happy nation. Satyagraha. Satyagraha is compound word that consists of two words, Satya and Agraha. The word Satya is derived from Sat, which means being, abiding, right, wise, self-sufficient existence. As anything really is, anything ought to be. Satya does not simply mean truth or veracity. It has a variety of connotations such as real, sincere existence, pure, good, effectual, and also valid Satya. Thus, as derived from the root sat, it was taken by Gandhi to mean that nothing exists in reality except truth. Everything else is illusion. Truth for Gandhi was a higher law that was just The word agraha is derived from the root graha, which means to seize or to grasp, to get hold of, to grab. Literally, this refers to the insistence on truth or holding on to truth. Satyagraha combines the concepts of firm and truth to mean factually standing firm for truth. Gandhi declared that Satyagraha is literally holding on truth and it means, therefore, truth force or soul force. To hold on the truth, it is essentially to first discover the truth. The Satyagraha is an active technique of action in a conflict situation which consists of a conflict resolution is known as a satyagraha. Satyagraha, however, has been variously translated as passive resistance, non-violent direct action, and non-violent action, and even militant non-violence. For the resolution of conflict, satyagraha resorts to institutional means, example petitions to courts, etc. If possible, to non-institutional means, protests, demonstrations, sit-ins, strikes, civil disobedience if necessary. So Gandhi and Satyagraha, Gandhi had a holistic vision of human life that could be lived only morally. This morality permeated all aspects of his life. The individual, political, social, satyagraha is Gandhi's technique of non-violent activism. However, for Gandhi, it was not only method of conducting conflict but also a way of life, of living in truth, a birthright as well as a duty. It was not just a political technique but a complete program of existence which included proper food, dress, vegetarianism, and sanitation, among others. Gandhi used the technique of satyagraha to bring about social and political change. In elaborating his theory of satyagraha, Gandhi placed heavy emphasis on the fundamental unity of the universe. He viewed human beings as basically good and endowed with divine unity of the universe. He viewed human beings as basically good and endowed with divine powers. True satyagraha can ignite the divine spark which will awaken the consciousness of the opponent, leading to his moral persuasion. However, this is possible only when the satyagrahi confronts the opponent with non-violence by conviction rather than between what he calls the principle of self-suffering is central to the Gandhian conception of non-violence and thus to his approach to conflict. Gandhi wrote in August, Satyagraha is self-suffering and not inflicting violence. It is essential for the Satyagrahi to be willing to suffer the violence of others without inflicting himself, either by word or deed, and suffering in return. This will not only result in less loss of life, but will also be a morally enriching for humanity as a whole. 1922, 1922, Gandhi directed a non-cooperation movement. He believed that the continuation of British rule was based on the cooperation of Indians, and therefore the thrust of the present movement was to oust the British by withdrawing the cooperation of Indians. The movement included non-cooperation activities such as resignation from the army, and also bureaucracy, and the boycott of foreign cloth, elections, law courts, and government schools. It had a remarkable impact on the masses. However, Gandhi withdrew the movement in 1922 when a mob led by Congress volunteers killed 22 Indian police constables. On the other hand, the British also retaliated with force and ruthlessness, indiscriminate arrests, torture, and special tribunals. Nevertheless, Gandhi was unmoved in his faith and abstained from violence. So, non-violence being a core tenet of Satyagraha, Gandhi started the civil disobedience campaign when Congress demand for domain status was rejected by the British. The tax on salt, it was one of the, by Gandhi, symbolizing colonial injustice. He led a march to Dundee on the Gujarat seacoast, drawing massive crowds on the way to protest against the law and gave the British a monopoly on the production of salt. The British government arrested Gandhi, but the protest continued with the thousands going to jail. These protests were met with brutal reactions on the part of the British authorities, which further created mass support for Gandhi's cause. This was exactly what Gandhian Satyagrahi intended to achieve. Gandhi reiterated his conviction in Satyagraha towards the end of his life. He wrote Harijan in 1946 that Satyagraha is a law of universal significance as well as a process of educating public opinion such that it covers all the elements in society and in the end makes itself violence interrupts the process and prolongs the real revolution of the whole structure. Gandhi stressed on the constructive program and saw it as the most novel mode of the satyagraha. He wanted the satyagrahi to engage in silent, active, constructive work of reform and social service. Taking over the government machinery was just a shadow for Gandhi. It was only through the constructive program that a system of non-violent self-rule would emerge and a new social order could be built. The constructive program involved working toward communal unity, the removal of untouchability, a program of adult education and village improvement, recent uplift and the development of the non-violent labor unions, economic and social equality, decentralized economic production, and distribution through the promotion of the cottage and small scale industries, and the abolition of various social evils. A couple of days before his death, Gandhi emphasized that political freedom was meaningless to the individual citizen without the attainment of economic, social, and moral freedom. Satyagraha as a tool of conflict resolution. Gandhian Satyagraha and conflict resolution seem to disagree on some issues, and such issue on the usage of third party intervention. Conflict resolution involves the usage of problem solving methods and third party intervention tools such as negotiations and mediations. Gandhi opined that third party intervention should generally be rejected. He saw conflict as a medium through which the parties could develop a higher degree of awareness of themselves as well as the other party and third party intervention. The modern conflict resolution process also stress on bilateral approach in negotiation and mediation, for it gives the parties the opportunity to maintain control over both the development and selection of viable solutions. Ultimately, the parties are the decisions makers. It emphasizes on improving communication and developing trust and cooperation. This would then evolve analysis and reconstruction of beliefs about the attitudes towards the other side. Change in attitude would be lead to change the behavior. In Gandhian terms, this would ultimately lead to conversion in the field of the conflict transformation. Empowerment of the discontents is a key aspect of the third party's role, is more a facilitator and a responsible for the process rather than the outcome. So the resolution. The field of conflict resolution had not developed during the days of Gandhi, and therefore he may not have been aware of all the techniques, methods, tools, and approaches of the conflict resolution that we have the privilege of knowing today. Hello, sir.
సార్
Uh,
ఈ రోజుకి కంప్లీట్ చేద్దాం సార్.
yes, sir.
రేపు మళ్ళీ 3 to 5 సార్.
Okay, sir.
ఓకే సార్, వీఆర్ కంక్లూడింగ్ టుడే. థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్.
Yes.
థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. Vinay Gandhi tomorrow by 3 join.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay, right.